Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video.
Hello, Rachel Oates. Now, today I'm going to be responding to and kind of critiquing one of these videos. But first, I want to say that Rachel Oates is one of the nicest people on YouTube. There are many feminists, unfortunately, that actually just hate men, but Rachel Oates is not one of these people. But as you'll see, I have many agreements and disagreements with feminism. As usual, many of my comments will seem harsh and critical, but this shouldn't be taken as some sort of personal insult. I only insult right-wingers.
Today we're going to be talking about the whole not all men crap. And it really is crap. It absolutely is. I'm out of patience. I'm not going to hold back in this video. I'm not going to try and be polite. I'm just going to share my feelings with you.
Now, what is not all men? Well, besides being basically an internet meme by this point, not all men originally was supposed to be a sort of call for nuance. Of course, when a lot of idiots talk about not all men, they're just using it as an excuse to not talk about rape. But the point of not all men isn't just simply to say that not all men rape. Of course, everybody already knows that. Rather, it's more of a critique of reductive statements like the conflation of insensitive or unknowledgeable men with actual rapists as all under the category of part of the problem, as it's called. It's also important to note how originally justified caution around men can eventually evolve into some sort of internalized misandry.
Throughout this video, I'm mostly just going to be saying men, women, blah, blah, blah. I just want you to know that that's mostly for ease and time-savingness, so I don't have to repeat myself too much. But please know that within that, I am including certain non-binary people and certain transgender people.
The erroneous belief that trans women are just men dressing up as women so that they can rape people can actually fall under the banner of protection that would be offered by #NotAllMen. This is because trans women are often viewed in terms of masculinity, and the irrational fear of trans women being rapists is inextricably tied with social misandry.
Today, mostly, I want to talk about violence and harassment against women that happens in public on the streets. Mostly at night, but not always. Hundreds, thousands of women every year are harassed, assaulted, raped, murdered. And it's not just full-on rape or full-on murder that's the issue. It's people being touched inappropriately. It's people being assaulted. It's people being catcalled. It's people being made to feel scared and uncomfortable in what should be their own space. Despite how people like to pull out lines like, but some crimes are committed by women. That's not what's relevant to this particular conversation. You're muddying the waters.
Let me muddy the waters just a little bit more. Besides trans people and NBs, of course, men are overwhelmingly the victims of violent crime compared to women. Statistically speaking, women are only in greater danger in terms of sexual violence. That is, if you don't count circumcision as genital mutilation. Now, the conversation about sexual violence is one that I'm perfectly willing to have, but it's alarming to know that violence against men is almost never addressed in feminist circles or otherwise, despite comprising the majority of violent crimes.
No one is saying women don't commit crimes. Violent and sexual crimes are overwhelmingly committed by men. And I don't just mean it's like a 51 to 49% split. I mean overwhelmingly committed by men. And then when we consider murders, rapes, violent attacks, and sexual harassment against women in public perpetrated by strangers, almost every case there is committed by a man.
Now, here's the crux of the problem. It is true that men are overwhelmingly the perpetrators of violent crime, but it's also true that despite being 13% of the— okay. What disappoints me is that we're able to go the extra mile to find systemic ways to address black violence, Muslim violence, whatever. But when it comes to men, we all just revert back to men need to stop raping women. This biological essentialism a lot of the time sounds kinda right-wing. So at this point, you must either conclude men and women are fundamentally different, which I vehemently reject, or we can find some solution that doesn't pin the blame all on men. Therefore, #NotAllMen.
I mean, sure, all kinds of people commit all kinds of crimes, but honestly, the chance of a random woman on the street being attacked or harassed by a random man on the street is so disgustingly high that it's no wonder so many of us are terrified to go out alone.
Again, we have to be careful about statistical fallacies here. Terrorist attacks are overwhelmingly likely to be perpetrated by Muslims, but Muslims are not overwhelmingly likely to be terrorists. This is not to say that rape isn't a problem or that women aren't disproportionately and far too often the victims of rape, but it is important to be careful of these attitudes that can lead to Islamophobia and, of course, can lead to misandry.
What's kind of recently kickstarted this conversation in the UK is the absolutely heartbreaking case.
We don't deal with anecdotes on this channel, but your point is taken. Statistically, women are far too often the victims of rape. It's a problem worth addressing.
This has happened to countless other women, and while not every woman has ended up dead, many have ended up hurt or terrified or physically or emotionally scarred. There's just a lot, you know. I think nearly every woman and non-binary person I personally know has feared for their safety while walking alone at some point, especially at night.
More anecdotes, I believe you, but get to the point.
We're finally starting to have real conversations about this now, about why women feel unsafe, what is causing this, and what men and other people can do to make women feel safer, to make people feel safer, to stop other people being hurt.
You know what I think? I think we should be focused not on what men can do to help women, but what we as society can do to help men. Because think about it. Rape has, as far as relevance goes, never been acceptable. We've been trying to crack down on male violence since feminism's been around, at least. We've tried temperance, we've tried Me Too, we've tried Believe Women, and it's not working. Caring more about women and impugning men more doesn't do anything. Society already cares about women. But have you seen the state of men these days? They're all lonely, depressed, angry, and desperate. No wonder they're committing all these crimes. The incel and MGTOW movements are just another symptom of this social misandry. So why don't we try something that we've never tried before? Care more about men. I've drawn this back to racism and Islamophobia and transphobia. There is no better intersectional praxis than including men as one of our categories.
So many people now are actually finally starting to listen and learn, and it's amazing. I've had so many great messages. And then there's a very loud, very vocal minority who are incredibly disappointing. This minority are the kinds of people who do post with the hashtag #NotAllMen and tell me that they're offended by me posting about women being scared to go out alone, telling me that it's hurt their feelings that I would dare say anything about how some men need to change their behavior. I'm like, I don't care if I've hurt your feelings. I'd rather your feelings are hurt than another woman physically gets hurt. And now I can't even believe I have to say this, but I think it should be made very, very clear. Of course, not all men hurt women. No one is saying that. And following on from this, not all men want to hurt women. Not all men have the intention of hurting women. Not all men want to scare women. Not all men will think they're scaring women. That's obvious. No one's saying that. No one is saying all men are rapists, all men are murderers, all men are violent, whatever. No one is saying that.
You'd be surprised.
Not a single reasonable person. And if they are, then fine, critique that. But for the most part, the people saying not all men in response to these kinds of conversations are completely taking everything out of context. They're twisting it for the sake of their own agenda.
Truth be told, a lot of people on the anti-feminist and anti-SJW train, in fact a majority of them, do make bad faith arguments, often with the hashtag #NotAllMen. But it's kind of our fault for not including men and therefore pushing them toward the right of the political spectrum.
But while not all men are violent, the fact is that most women have been hurt or harassed or violated in some way, and in nearly every single case the perpetrator has been a man. So how is it surprising that women alone in public fear most men they come across?
Again, this type of argument can edge on 1350 territory.
It's not all men, but it could be any man. I've seen really great analogies online trying to explain this, like not all ticks carry Lyme disease, but we still try and avoid all ticks. And so while they're not perfect analogies, as this guy likes to point out, they do get the point across. And I think maybe instead of sitting there and picking faults with analogies, you should realize what they're trying to tell you. And that is that we don't know who the dangerous men are. We can't tell by looking at you if you're dangerous or not. We can only kind of guess based on your behavior. And so if your behavior is mimicking that of men who do want to hurt us, we are going to be scared. And it's not up to a woman to just decide not to be scared, because you can't do that, because that's how you end up dead. It's up to the men to change their behavior. If you don't want to hurt a woman, don't act like you do.
Now, I want to approach this subject with a bit of sensitivity, so I want to say, how the fuck does any of this make any sense at all? First, you say you don't care about people's feelings.
I'm like, I don't care if I've hurt your feelings.
And then you say that men should change their actions to cater to what women would like.
And it's not up to a woman to just decide not to be scared, because you can't do that, because that's how you end up dead.
So the contrast here is that women's feelings are more valid because that actually could make the difference between life and death.
It's up to the men to change their behavior. If you don't want to hurt a woman, don't act like you do.
But the advice here doesn't actually prevent any rapes. Actual rapists won't follow your advice, so you're basically just telling non-rapist men how to act around women. Now, I do think it's good for men to be sensitive around women, especially given we've been socialized to be these emotionless, ultra-competitive chads who do nothing but think about sex. It's obviously a good idea not to scare people, but you lose me when you say,
if you don't want to hurt a woman, don't act like you do.
If this advice is calling for men in general to change how they act around women, that implies you think most men act like they want to rape women. Now, I've watched enough of your videos to know you don't actually think that, but at this point, this is just feelings against feelings, microaggressions against microaggressions. Now, I've argued that the cause of high amounts of male sexual violence is social ostracization, which is why I'm inclined to believe that impugning men either directly or indirectly and putting extra requirements on them can be counterproductive.
Make simple changes to make sure the women around you feel safe. It's as simple as that.
It's not that simple, is it? I'm perfectly happy to accommodate to make sure the people around me feel comfortable, and I hope other men are too, but my critique is more systemic. This is my main problem with feminism. It's selectively nuanced.
I'm going to say this again, I'm going to say over and over. No one is saying all men hurt women, but we are saying any man that we meet could be dangerous. You know, don't try and logic your way out of this. Don't tell women what she should be feeling. It just is true. Men approaching women on their own, especially at night, is terrifying. Men are statistically more likely to hurt us. Men are physically more capable of hurting us. 97% of women have had bad experiences with men harassing or assaulting them.
Now, it may seem like I'm being very harsh and uncharitable here, though I'd like to think my criticism is more intelligent than some alt-right anti-SJW. I'd like to emphasize that defending men as I have should in no way detract from the experiences of women, and being afraid of the unknown, as women are of men sometimes, is very evolutionarily rational sometimes. Point is, I'm not trying to distract from sexual violence as an issue, but offering a rarely addressed perspective on how to go about solving it.
What you might consider a perfectly innocent action of running down a street, a woman may interpret as, this is a man chasing her, she's gonna die any second now. And what we're saying is, please just be a little more considerate of how your actions are perceived, and just be more aware not to scare women.
Again, this can be a reasonable request, as long as you don't tie it to character judgments of men as a group. After all, they've been socialized to behave as they do.
Mostly what people are asking for is for men to educate themselves.
I'm not specifically criticizing Rachel here, but words educate yourself isn't very convincing to most people. Like, to a conservative, this just sounds like some shit-lib bradfem telling people to, go educate yourself, you cis white hetero male. In the wrong context, it can sound condescending, you know what I mean?
To not catcall women.
I generally agree with this, but come on, like, some women like to be catcalled. How about this? You can catcall a woman if she's dressed slutty in a bar, otherwise no. Does that sound reasonable? No, of course not. That's rape culture. You can't do that. Just don't catcall women, fine.
To not approach or try and strike up a conversation with random women that they see on the street.
Sure, I'm antisocial anyway. There's a reason I'm sitting here in a closet making videos, right?
We want men to stop with the inappropriate jokes and conversation that normalize rape and harassment.
This sounds suspiciously like those people who want to ban GTA because it supposedly normalizes violence. I don't think there's any actual evidence for this. I mean, I don't go around looking to tell rape jokes all the time or anything, but if one comes across me, I'm not gonna pass it up or anything.
We want men to step in if you see women being harassed by another man. Don't just put your head down and get on with it. Don't just think, oh, well, that's their problem, it's a domestic. No. You step in, you say something, you help that vulnerable person.
I mean, it would be nice for everyone to be that heroic, but I wouldn't fault a guy for not wanting to mess with a sexual harasser.
It's little things like this. That's all we're asking for. We're not saying if you're a man, you must be a rapist slash attacker slash harasser. We're actually saying to show us you're not a man who wants to rape, attack, or harass us, could you please make these tiny changes to make us feel a little safer, please?
I mean, I'm being a bit nitpicky right now, but you're basically asking us to virtue signal.
To all these men messaging me who say they feel hurt or targeted by this, I just need to ask you, is your need to walk 3 steps behind a woman for 20 minutes more important than a woman's need to feel safe?
Well, we could talk about one person's feelings superseding another's actions, but that's not what they're saying, is it? I'm sure they're okay with the action of taking a few steps back, but it's more of the fact that they need to go out of the way to prove their innocence just because they have a penis. That's the problem here. Again, some women fear trans people because they think they're secretly men in disguise waiting to rape them, you know? I mean, we'd rightfully call that out as transphobia, but the basis of that is still a distrust for men, right?
Is your need to keep your head down and not get involved when you see a man grabbing a woman in public more important than that woman's right not to be raped?
No, but my preference to not have my ass whooped by said man grabbing woman should be up for consideration, right?
Is your need to, I don't know, shout, "Nice legs, babe," really more important than that woman's need to feel safe and secure and like she's not going to die on the way to Tesco?
What's Tesco?
And if you answered no to all of those questions, then great, fantastic, you're on the right track. Keep going. And if you also answered no to those questions, then I think we're on the same page and there's no need for you to be shouting, "Not all men" anymore, because you're just making yourself look stupid at this point.
I don't like this arrangement where you're the teacher and I'm the one who needs to be educated, where men's concerns are blatantly discarded because, as I said, men's social alienation may be the cause of a lot of this violence.
But if you answered yes to one or all of those questions, then you may be a douchebag who needs immediate counselling and shouldn't be allowed out of the house alone for ever.
Wait, so men have to be willing to do all 3 of these things, make way for women, rescue women who are in trouble, and don't catcall women, or else they get put in house arrest? Fuck, when's the last time women went out of their way to do anything for men?
When I started posting about this stuff on Instagram, I had a few men reach out to me in shock and disgust and confusion because, I told them don't approach lone women in public. Lots of the responses I got included, "Well, I guess I'll die alone now," and "How will I ever get a date?" To which I have to say I'd rather you would die alone without a relationship than more women die needlessly at the hands of violent men.
Wait, those people aren't murderers, they're just lonely. Way to victim blame. Like, you might actually be creating incels and MGTOWs by saying this sort of stuff. I'm not defending walking up to strangers and asking them out, but you're being really uncharitable here.
But maybe that's just me. Let's look at a few examples.
We're gonna skip past this anecdote here.
If you do want someone to date, do it in a setting where those kinds of interactions are expected and encouraged. For example, dating apps, certain bars and clubs, singles events. You don't have to approach random women on the street and risk making them feel scared and uncomfortable and intimidated. And the other thing is, if you do approach a random woman on the street, she might feel inclined to say yes because she doesn't want to anger you by saying no. It puts a lot of pressure on a woman. It's terrifying.
True, my problem has always been that it seems like you're impugning men for simply not knowing any better.
Why wouldn't you say something if you're being made to be uncomfortable? I'm just curious, as if someone was doing something that made me have negative feelings, I would say something, which I think is very easy to ask as a man and kind of shows how little you have to think about compared to women when it comes to these kinds of social interactions. Because I wish it was that simple.
Rachel brings up a good point here, which is that men don't know what it's like to be women, which is why they have to be more sensitive to these sorts of things. But on the other hand, it goes the other way too. Women don't know what it's like to be men, and a lot of men are confused because, frankly, women don't make it easy for them. Some women are indirect, passive-aggressive, or play hard to get, what we might call toxic femininity, and that really confuses men. And while the classic line is, "You're just victim blaming, it's not up to women to change their behavior, men have to not rape," That's really reductive. There is no way to dig ourselves out of this hole unless we start paying attention to men's experiences just as much as women's. Alright, here Rachel goes into a long-winded story analogy of women walking alone in a forest surrounded by bears. There's pink bears, which are the good guy bears, and there's every other color of bear who are bad. And we're trying to decide whether some bear following you is pink or not.
But here's where the problem lies with some pink bears. Because if you say this to the pink bears, or if you ever see a pink bear and he notices how scared you are of him, or if you ever publicly say, hey, pink bears, this is what you can do to make me feel safer in the forest, some of those pink bears will immediately get defensive. Some of those pink bears will take personal offense to this. They will start to mock your feelings. They'll start to doubt your feelings. Because look at him. He's just a pink bear. He's not going to hurt you. You should know that. He's not like the other bears. It's horrible of you. It's so mean to not give him the benefit of the doubt. Look at him. He's pink. It doesn't matter if assuming he was pink would have put you in more danger. You should have just done it because now you've done the worst thing in the world and you've hurt his feelings. That's the worst thing anyone can ever do to anyone. Poor pink bears. And so he goes home and he goes on Facebook and Instagram and Reddit and Twitter and he starts posting, not all bears, people. Hashtag not all bears.
And then a bunch of red bears come up to the pink bear and say, huh, look at those humans. They never trust you even though you're pink. They think you'll eat them just because you're a bear. Those humans will never trust you. They will never love you. Nobody will ever love you. Come join our forum. Come paint yourself red. And so because you insulted a pink bear for not virtue signaling and catering to your every desire, you turned him into a red bear who wants to go and eat you.
I genuinely don't think men realize how easy they have some things.
I think the same thing could be said the other way around. People go out of their way to help women. Besides me, when's the last time anybody said, be nice to men?
Not just, mostly feeling safe when they go out anywhere alone.
And this is a sham too, since men are more likely to be the victims of violence than women.
But things as well, like dating someone new, for example. So those people who message me, their worries were, oh, what if I don't get a date? What if I end up alone? What if I stay single? Whereas a woman's worries when it comes to dating is, if I go on this date, what if I end up dead? What if I end up raped?
Fuck, men have to make the investment here. They have to ask the woman out. They have to pay for the dates. They have to do everything. And at the end of it all, they might have to end up paying childcare for someone who's no longer with them. Like, all this isn't on the caliber of something like date rape, but sheesh, you can understand why men are taken aback when they've spent all this effort only to learn that you still don't trust them.
Like, I've literally been on dates with men who, like, when I've asked them, like, oh, your housemate's expecting you home at any time or whatever, they'll literally be like, nah, no one knows I'm here. Because men can do that. Men don't have to think about that kind of thing. Whereas for me, as a woman, I have to Google every guy that I go on a date with. I now run his name through, like, Claire's Law checks to make sure he's not an abuser. I send photos of him and literally every detail I know of him to my friends to be like, this is who I'm going on a date with, this is where I'm going, this is the time. I text my friends before I set off. I text my friends when I arrive. I text them an hour into the date. I text them before I head home. I text them when I get home. And it doesn't stop until you're back safe alone in the house. You constantly check in with another person because that's the only way you feel safe.
Now, when I heard this, I thought two things. One, wow, it's really that serious, huh? And two, the fact you've dated enough guys to build up this sort of routine just shows the other side of the privilege coin, where men will plan for weeks, months, or years to ask someone out while you're just flipping and flopping between different guys all the time.
And then, of course, while you're doing all this, you have to contend with the whole, like, well, is he going to get mad at me if I'm texting in front of him? Is this going to seem rude? I don't know. And even if you sit there and explain to him, sorry, just telling my friend I got here safe, are they going to get offended? Are they going to take offense to this and be like, what, you think I'm dangerous? Because some men do that. And you have to be like, well, yes, you could be. And men, like these not all men, will take offense to that for some reason.
I think I've explained pretty thoroughly why this would be the case. Again, I'm just asking for empathy on both sides.
Another thing I'm absolutely sick of hearing and seeing, especially online, are jokes about how certain women don't have to worry about being harassed or raped or killed, or how 97% seems too high because not that many women are hot. Not believing a woman's story of assault or harassment because they're, in your opinion, not hot enough is disgusting. It's repulsive. Because when men do that to women, when men shout abusive things, when they harass women, when they touch them inappropriately, when they assault them, when they rape them, when they kill them, it's not a sexual thing. It's not a, oh, I'm gonna go out and find the hottest girl I can find just so I can rape her tonight. It's not about that. It's about power and control and coercion.
True. And that's why ideologies enforcing some sort of hierarchical dominance should be opposed at all costs. The way we do that is pulling men away from the right wing. That means treating them empathetically and giving them a place in the intersectional analysis. The best way to attract people to your ideology is by appealing to their socioeconomic interests. That's why we need a leftist movement for men.
I guess what kind of prompted all this was the other night when I reposted a series of images on Instagram, and the last one ended with telling people who use not all men, like the hashtag, to like shut the F up or something. Like it was an image I reposted, and I got so many little boys mad at me personally for reposting that.
Well, yeah, if you reposted it, it means you endorse the statement, and by telling men to shut the fuck up, you're basically telling them that their input isn't valuable.
Like this guy who said, "But you don't have to be rude to men just because a portion of us are pieces of poop." That post you put on your story actually kind of hurt my feelings. I've walked close to many women with no intentions of harming them whatsoever. I'm like, I'm sorry, but even though you have no intentions, how do those women know? The fact that you've done that means you're part of the problem.
The words, "you're part of the problem," is why not all men is so valuable. You're equivocating between actual rapists and men who simply don't know any better. A lot of people hate feminism because it's super preachy. It expects you to change your behavior on other people's behalf by guilting you into doing it and associating you with rapists or racists, all without a shred of empathy for those people you're asking favors from. It's an optical nightmare.
You're scaring women, whether it was your intention or not. I'm sorry if it hurts your feelings to say that, but simple, change your behavior.
See, change your behavior to make women feel better, or else we'll make you feel bad. Why the fuck do you think shaming people into helping you works?
Women can rape too, though usually they choose children.
Yikes, I ain't defending that one.
Women not being killed is more important than a man's feelings.
Yeah, so I get it when a woman's trying to avoid a man for her own safety, but I just don't get why it's important to impugn people for not virtue signaling their own non-rapiness. Take a step back and listen to what you're saying. This is not a healthy arrangement.
This reminds me of all the people who are offended by like the Black Lives Matter stuff and being like, well, everyone faces discrimination to some extent. It's like, yes, they do, and that's bad. Doesn't mean racism doesn't exist.
And yet, instead of blaming black people for being violent or stupid, we found systemic solutions to all of these problems. We've got to reallocate money away from the police and towards social workers. We've got to reinvest into poor communities. All you've proposed for solving rape culture is to tell non-rapists how to act around women. I've proposed solutions for men's social inclusion as well as pulling them away from the alt-right movement. What you're doing is counterproductive and fundamentally misunderstands the meaning behind not all men. When it comes to building an anti-racist and anti-sexist coalition, men's feelings matter.
Or the people who were offended when people were calling out, like saying, oh, well, as a white person, you can do X, Y, and Z to help this. People were offended by that instead of being all, not all white people. If you're not racist yourself, there's nothing to be offended by. The statement, I hate racists, shouldn't offend you unless you're a racist.
See, this is what's so frustrating. We should be clarifying what we mean. For example, we're not talking about white people just being evil because. We're talking about systems which create unequal outcomes regardless of whether any given white person is independently racist. But instead, we go ahead and say, well, you're offended? You must be racist. How does that help bring anybody to our side?
There's nothing to be offended by posts that help everyone achieve that goal.
But I don't think they are achieving that goal. I think they're just pushing people away and making people more racist.
If me saying, shut up if you say not all men because you're missing the point and contributing to a harmful narrative offends you, then maybe it's because you're doing the harmful thing that I just mentioned.
Or maybe you're just wrong. I've admitted already that a lot of people use not all men in a very bad faith manner, but I'm not one of them. You could say, not all men.
Just like I don't care if I hurt an anti-masker's feelings by telling them to put on a mask.
That only works because some people are asymptomatic but also spread the disease. Nobody rapes on accident. Telling non-sexual predators to cross the street won't prevent any rapes because those non-sexual predators don't accidentally rape people.
I don't care if I hurt a child molester's feelings by telling them to stay away from children.
But anybody could be a child molester, and child molesters are overwhelmingly more powerful than children. Therefore, everybody should stay away from children. Also, nice job equivocating hashtag all men to child molesters. See, this is what I'm warning about when I mention the slippery slope between being cautious around men and subtly developing some sort of internalized misandry. I know Rachel Oates doesn't hate men. I've seen her defend men on her channel. But this can lead to a very bad road.
Don't know which are the lying, cheating gutter sluts. Does that mean it's safe to call all women that? For one, I'm going to say it again. No one is calling all men rapists or assaulters or harassers. No one is saying that. No one. And two, I would rather be a gutter slut than be raped. So there's that. And three, I don't know about you guys, but I don't think this man is going to end up dead if a woman approaches him in the street on a dark night and ends up to be a lying cheater. I don't think he will, so it's not really the same, is it?
Why are we comparing who's worse off here? I mean, both of these are bad, right? The correct answer here is just as women can be wary of men when traveling alone, men can be wary of women who might want to take advantage of them. But that's never an excuse to simply characterize someone as a rapist or a cheater. This response just creates antagonism.
If he's walking down a dark street at night and a woman comes up to him and there's a 50-50 chance that she's a cheater in a relationship, he's still going to get home safe at the end of the night.
I mean, you never know if she decides to get the police involved.
So in conclusion, no one is calling all men rapists, but women are saying they're afraid of many men, whether they're dangerous or not.
No one is saying, I'm not saying women shouldn't be careful at night.
If you're not actually a dangerous man and you do care about being a decent human being, then there are a few small changes you can make your behavior to make women feel safe.
Make men feel valued.
And doing these things actually shows them that you're not a rapist / attacker / harasser.
Showing you're not a raging misandrist.
So I don't see why anyone would be offended by being asked to do them.
I don't see why a person would insult a man for not feeling trusted.
If you've never attacked, harassed, or raped a woman, then you're not a direct part of the problem.
If you've never falsely accused a man of being a sexual predator, then you might not be part of the problem.
But you can be a direct part of the solution. And if after all this you still manage to miss the point and I shout in not all men and you're going to tell me that, oh, blah, 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 feminazi.
If after all of this you manage to miss the point and say, men must prove they're not rapists.
Or blah, 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 I used to like your content until this, I'll be unsubscribing. Then please do, because you're not welcome here.
Anybody's welcome to subscribe to me, even if you disagree with me. Especially if you disagree with me. I want to hear what you think.
Like I say, just because you're not out there actually raping women, it doesn't mean you can't do your bit to help women feel safe and secure and protected.
Look, I'm happy to do whatever I can to make the women around me feel comfortable. I just want you to consider men's experiences and make them feel trusted and valued. And give me a hand job while you're at it.
I'm and I approve this message.